is by a 6-year-old girl, and her name is Sade. And this is Sade right here, 6 years old, and she is proudly Nigerian and Scottish. And she's also sent a little bit of information about herself. So this girl loves to dance. She loves ballet, she loves tap, she loves modern, and she also loves gymnastics. So I guess she loves twirling and cartwheeling and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So yes, how wonderful. She has, of course, drawn this beautiful picture of a swan and sent this in. So thank you for that. Hi to Ewan and Callum, who have just joined us with Dad. And oh, here is another picture that we have got. And this one is from Sammy, who is watching. Oh no, this one is from Sammy right here. And of course, I'm sure that we are all familiar with this. This is, of course, the Easter bunnies. And we're coming closer to Easter, so I thought this would be quite a good one for today. So hi to Felipe and Ruben in Mexico. I think you're there, so nice to see you. It's been a long time. And the last one, this one is coming from very, very far away. And this is a beautiful depiction of the solar system. And this has been sent in by Jack. And Jack is 5 years old. He is incredibly, incredibly smart and knows all about the planets and the solar system that we live in. And yeah, he's 5 years old and lives in Australia. So hello to you, and hopefully you will be watching this. And if not, hopefully you'll catch up later on. And after I have finished the live video, he's actually sent in a little video explaining about this and telling us exactly which each planet is. So if you have forgotten whether, I don't know if you remember it with My Very Earnest Mother, that thing that kind of tells you the order of the planets, well, Jack will be explaining in a little video that I'll post afterwards. So, a story that I have created based on these artworks. Well, I'm going to start with this one. You see, there was once a solar system. And a lot of people think that the planets in the solar system are made of rock and ice and ash and things like that. But there was one very, very special planet. And it wasn't made of rock, and it wasn't made of ice, and it wasn't made of dirt or anything like that. And it was this one right here. And it was made of chocolate. Look at that. I'll come right in close so you can see. Unmistakable. That planet was made of chocolate. Pure chocolate. And of course, it was the home to the Easter bunnies. And they had a very, very important job, because every year they would whiz around the entire solar system delivering all the Easter eggs. And one day, there they were, whizzing through space in their special spacecraft, when suddenly the engine began to sputter and shake, and boom, they crashed into Earth. And all the eggs went rolling around everywhere. And the Easter bunnies, well, they were outraged. They said, what are we going to do? How could this happen? But they had a very important job to do. So they raced around, they gathered all the Easter eggs, they delivered some of them, but there were a whole load of others. And these eggs were destined to go to some of the other planets in the solar system. And they were only halfway through their rounds, and they said, what are we going to do? And they sat there, twitching their noses, and they thought, oh, this is a disaster. We're never going to be able to do this. We're never going to be able to get back home to our beautiful chocolatey planet. What are we going to do? And they started weeping and crying. And of course, this attracted the attention of somebody who happened to be passing by. And it was a beautiful swan. And the swan went over to the Easter bunnies and said, hey, what's going on? How come you're so upset? And they explained the whole story. And she said, my goodness, that is awful. You mean the children will never, ever, ever get any more chocolate Easter eggs? And they said, no, not if we can't get back to our planet. That can't happen. I won't allow it to happen. And so she told them a secret. She said, well, I'm not supposed to say, but swans are all magic. All of us are magic. Every single swan that you see floating on the lakes, we've all got a little bit of a superpower. And my superpower is that I can get big. Very, very big. And right there and then, she started to spread her wings and they grew bigger and bigger and larger and larger. And the Easter bunnies, well, they looked in amazement as she swelled in size until suddenly she was enormous. And then she said, hop on with your Easter eggs and I will take you home. And so the Easter bunnies, they hopped onto the back of the swan, and the swan spread her wings and whoosh, she flew back out into space, and she went past all the planets. If you know some of the planets, you can make a little comment. But yeah, flew past Mars, flew past Jupiter, flew past Saturn. She kept on flying and flying and flying until finally she arrived right back at their great big chocolate planet. And of course they landed and they said, thank you very, very much. And the swan, well, she flew back down to the earth, where she took on the appearance of just being a regular swan. But the Easter bunnies, well, they were very, very grateful, and they were able to rebuild a brand new spacecraft and continue delivering their Easter eggs all over the world. But next time anybody is out there walking in the park and you happen to see a beautiful swan floating by, just say a little thank you, because without the swan, there would be no chocolate Easter eggs this Easter. So there you go. That is my story for you today. And thank you very, very much again to Jack in Australia. Look out for his video in the comments that I'll post after the story if you want to know more about these. And just so you know, these ones are some of the extra planets that I didn't even know about. So if you're very clever, you might know what happens after you hit Pluto. Thanks also to Sammy for the Easter bunnies, and a very big thank you to Sade for her beautiful, beautiful swan. And I think she is watching now, so hello to you. So I am going to be telling you the main story. Haha. But hi to Merin and Mira, who I've just seen there. So good to have you back. And the story that I'm going to tell today is a story from a continent that we have not had yet. We've been to South America. We have been to Africa. We have been to Asia. We have been to Australasia, and we are missing, we've been to Europe, and where else? I don't know if there are any stories in Antarctica, so there's one more. Yeah, this is a story from North America, from Canada, and unfortunately I don't know where exactly in Canada the story is from, but I know that it is billed as a traditional North American traditional story. So I apologize for not knowing more, and if you do know the origins of this story, then please do let me know, because I think it's always important to give credit where credit is due. So this story, I'm going to have to give you a little warning about this story, because sometimes stories don't always have good bits in them. If we look at Hansel and Gretel, what happens to Hansel and Gretel when they're locked in a cage and they're fed chicken bones? And what happens to the witch? She gets pushed into an oven. Sometimes bad things like that are necessary for the story to continue. So there might be something not very pleasant happening in my story, but luckily, if you're one of the little ones, you'll be close to your mum or your dad, so you can just snuggle in tight. So this story is about a poor woman. She was very, very poor, and she had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And one of the reasons that she was very poor is because her husband had died a long, long time ago. And so she had to do all the work herself to try and make sure that her 2 children were fed and had clothes, and she could buy things for the house. And so it meant that she had to travel away at times to look for fish, or to go hunting, or to travel to the villages that were very, very far away. And sometimes, because she had to travel so far away, the 2 children were left alone, because it would have been impossible to travel far distances with 2 children. And because she had to leave quite frequently, it meant that the children were often left by themselves for long periods of time. And because there was no parent to keep an eye on them, what do you think happened to them? Well, they became quite disobedient. They began to think, well, we can do what we want. We don't need our mother telling us what to do, or what to say, or when to come, or how to clean and to cook. No, we can sort ourselves out. So when the mother came back, She tried her hardest to get her children to help her, and they would sit and say, "No, I don't want to. No, can't be bothered. I'll do it later." And she said, "Children, please understand, you have to help me, and this disobedience is going to get you into trouble." But the boy and the girl shrugged their shoulders, and off they went to do whatever naughty boys and girls do. But one day, the mother had to go to the town, and it was going to take hours and hours. And so she thought that she might boil some bear fat, because that's what they used in those days for lots of different things. And she put the bear fat into a great big cooking pot, and she put it on the fire. And just before she left, she said to the boy and the girl, "Children, don't go anywhere near that cooking pot, because if that bear fat catches fire, there's going to be trouble and you could get hurt." And the children said, "Yeah, okay, we won't go anywhere near it." But of course, as soon as the mother had left the house and had been gone for just a few moments, the children were right in that room. And the boy said to the girl, Shall we see if it's hot enough yet? Shall we see if the bear fat will really catch fire?" And so they reached under the cooking pot, and whoosh, they pulled out a burning stick. And they looked at each other with gleeful, mischievous twinkles in their eye. And they said, "Let's do it." And they took that burning stick and they tossed it into the cooking pot. And they waited for something to happen. But nothing happened. And so they got closer and closer and peered into the cooking pot, when suddenly the bear fat began to sputter, and then suddenly there was a great big flash of light, and a great tongue of flame shot up into the sky. And the children, well, it caught them. It burnt their hair to a crisp. They put their hands to their faces. Wah! And they raced outside, out of the house, out of the front door. And when they were outside and they looked around, they couldn't see anything. The fire had burnt their eyes. And when the mother came home, she said, "Oh no, I told you not to go anywhere near that cooking pot. This is a punishment for you being so disobedient." And she was very, very sad for them. But there was nothing that she could do. She tried all kinds of medicines and potions and lotions. She took them to the healers and to the doctors. She tried everything, but it was just no use. And so the children, well, they had to come to terms with living life without being able to see. And because of this, they had to listen to their mother an awful lot of the time, and they had to do a lot of things that she told them to do. And so they lived quite happily for a long time. When one day the mother had to go away hunting for some food for them to eat in the next few weeks, and while they were gone, there was a knock on the door. Who's there?" they said. "Oh, it's just an old woman looking for some food," came a voice. Now they knew that they had to respect their elders, and so they opened the door and they welcomed the old woman in, and they gave her food and water to drink, and the old woman was happy. And just when she had finished eating and was ready to leave, she said to the children, "Children, I know that you are blind, and I might be able to help, because I come from the land of the little people. Now, I won't be able to give you 4 eyes, but I could give you 1 eye, and you will share that eye, and whoever needs it at some time will use it, but you must be very careful when you're handing it back and forwards and passing it to each other. Never, ever, ever be irresponsible with this precious eye, otherwise misfortune will come your way." And of course the children were very, very grateful. And the old woman reached into her bag and she pulled out an eye and she handed it over to the children. And the children, they took it. The girl took it first and put it in, and she could see. She was so excited. And the brother said, "Oh, let me try. And she pulled it out and he took it, and it was an absolute miracle. Oh, they were dancing and running and leaping and having so much fun. But they remembered the words of the old woman, and they were very, very careful with that eye. Whenever the boy had it and the girl needed it, she would say, "Brother, will you please pass me the eye?" And he would take it out and carefully hand it over to her. And when the brother needed the eye, he would say, "Sister, will you please pass me the eye?" And out it came, and he would place it into his eye. And they were very, very happy. And after a whole year had gone by, they decided that they would go, or the boy decided that he was ready to go hunting. He was old enough and responsible enough, because they had matured over that whole year and had become quite responsible young people. And so off he went into the forest, and he had his bow and his arrow with him, and of course he had the eye, and he was looking around, searching for what game he might be able to catch. And he saw a young deer in the distance. He took out the bow and arrow and whoosh, he hit. There it was on the ground. And as he looked at it, he thought, I'm never going to be able to carry this by myself. I'm going to ask my sister to come and help. So he raced back to the house, and his sister came running out with him. And when they arrived, he said, "Okay, we'll chop up the deer and we'll put it into the basket, and then we'll carry it home." But his sister said, "Well, I didn't bring a basket. Do you have a basket?" And he said, "No, I didn't bring a basket. I thought you would bring one." And she said, "Well, I tell you what, I can weave a basket from some of the reeds. But brother, you're going to have to give me the eye." Out it came, and in she went. In she put it into her head, and she started to weave a basket. And while she was doing that, the boy was chopping up the pieces of meat. And when the basket was ready, I think that's still on. I think it had frozen for a little second. Yeah, and when he had finished making the basket, they started to put the pieces of meat into the basket, filling it up. And when they had finished, the boy said, "I'm really hungry after all that work. And I'd quite like to eat some of this meat. Shall we have a little meal just before we go back?" And the sister said, "Yes, fantastic, wonderful." And so she said, I will prepare a meal, and in the meantime, you could just really make sure that the meat is well packed into that basket." And he said, "Okay, but first let me make you a fire." So he took the eye back from his sister and put it in. He made the fire and was just about to start packing when she said, "Well, brother, I'm going to need that eye so that I can prepare the food." Now, he was becoming a little bit annoyed, so out it came, and she put it into her head, and she started to cook the meat. And there it was, making sure that it wasn't going to burn, and that delicious aroma, wonderful. They were both looking forward to this tasty meal, and he was busy packing the basket full of all that meat. And then the sister said, "Oh, that meat is almost ready." And he said, "Well, could you just come and quickly just help me finish this last little bit, because I can't quite figure out how to tie it on, and you've got the eye." And so the sister stood up, and over she went, and she helped to tie up the last bit of the meat. And then suddenly she smelt that the meat was burning, and she raced back over to the cooking area, and she said, "Oh no, the meat has burnt. How could you ask me to come and help you just when I had almost finished preparing the food?" And the brother said, "Oh, well, if you give me the eye, I'll go and get something else." And so out it came, and he put it into his head, and off he went. And the sister, well, she was annoyed, and she said, "Well, I've started to make some more meat now, so can you just give me the eye so I'll make sure it doesn't burn this time?" And the brother was so annoyed at this point that he pulled the eye out of his head and he threw it at his sister. And she tried to catch it, but she couldn't see a thing. And so she was clutching at air, and the eye landed on the ground. They were horrified. Both of them were immediately down on the ground, feeling around, trying to find that eye. "Oh, how could you be so silly? How could you be so daft?" they said to each other. "Oh no, what are we going to do?" And as they were busy looking for that eye, there was a woodpecker who had been watching the whole thing. And when he saw that beautiful, glistening, gleaming eye lying on the ground, he thought to himself, "That looks good." And whoosh, he flew down, picked it up, and off he went. Now, as soon as that had happened, the old woman reappeared. She had been watching the children too, And when she saw the woodpecker fly away with that eye, she came back and she said to the children, "Children, what are you doing?" "Oh, we accidentally just, the eye fell out of my brother's head when he was trying to carefully hand it to me," said the girl. And the brother agreed, "Yes, I was trying to pull it out and it slipped out of my hands onto the ground." And the old woman, well, she was very angry. She said, "I gave you a very precious gift and you have been careless with it. I was watching you and I saw how your anger took over and you threw the eye and it fell on the ground. You disobeyed me and now you are telling me a lie. There has to be a punishment." And with that, she spoke some words and whoosh, she turned the boy into a mole, and whoosh, she turned the girl into a bat. And she said, "You will continue to live on this earth. However, not one of you will ever rely on your sight you will never ever be able to see again. You will rely purely on sound." And so that is how the mole and the bat came to live in the world. And yeah, thanks to two very disobedient children. And I'm sure that there are absolutely no disobedient children watching tonight. And I'm glad that somebody there, Toby, I'm glad you like the sound effects. I'm sure you can practice some of that, some gruesome eye popping. Wonderful. So if you enjoyed that story, please do share it. And I'm going to be here tomorrow at 7 o'clock again with some more amazing stories. Please do keep sending me your artwork. Just another thank you again to Sade for her beautiful swan. Thank you to Sammy for his wonderful Easter bunnies. And a big thank you to Jack in Australia for sending us the solar system. So thank you very much again, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.